Welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr., your go-to wellness coaches of StressFreeNow.info. Our featured guest today is Dr. Constance Scharff, speaking about her award-winning book of poetry, Meeting God at Midnight. Dr. Scharff is an internationally recognized speaker and author on the topics of addiction recovery, women's health, and overcoming trauma. She is the author under her Hebrew name, Ahuva Batya, of the award-winning poetry collection, Meeting God at Midnight, and co-author of the Amazon.com #1 best-selling book, Ending Addiction for Good. In her role as an addiction researcher, Dr. Scharff brings the latest in evidence-based addiction treatment information to those who suffer from addiction worldwide. She has spoken at conferences and shared information with researchers and mental health professionals in Europe, North and South America, the Middle East, Asia, Oceania, and Africa. Her goal is to eliminate the stigma that is too often associated with addiction and other mental health disorders, so that individuals in need of care will be able to receive treatment and recover. Dr. Scharff is a board member with the Society for Consciousness Studies and a member of the American Psychological Association, World Federation for Mental Health, Association for Experimental Education, and the North American Association for Environmental Education. She is a lifelong Girl Scout. In her spare time, Dr. Scharff rides a half Arabian gelding, and you can learn more about her by visiting her website, ConstanceScharff.com. Connie, welcome back. We're so happy to have you here again today.
Thank you.
Yes, Connie. Thank you for agreeing to come back to be on our show again. And as you know, we had such great fun on the first interview with you. You have two books, Connie. I just want to mention for our audience. The first book is Ending Addiction for Good, the groundbreaking holistic evidence-based way to transform your life. And this other book that you've written, which is just amazing, a book of poetry, or it's actually much more than just regular poems. It says, the title is Meeting God at Midnight. And I have to tell you, after taking a look at your writing, it is so profound. So audience, you are in for a very special treat because we are with the Honorable Dr. Connie Scharff, and we are going to go deep. This is going to be like touchdown passes and running for touchdowns on this show because we are going to go deep. So, Connie, I want to start us off here and ask you this question. You have written this book, Meeting God at Midnight, and when I just started reading the first couple of pages, it stopped me in my tracks. So I just want to flip to something that I think that will resonate with our audience, where you talk about being at the top of a grain silo. So obviously you're not living in the city. Could you, on page 4, this says Grain Silo 1980. Could you, although that is a painful episode in our life, I think that would set the tone for our conversation. Could you just share with our audience what was going on with you and why you wrote that poem and how that has led to your recovery and healing?
Sure. So, let's see. A few years ago, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, I started getting very sick. And I was hemorrhaging quite a lot. And it started out with very heavy menses and then became constant menses. And then I really was actually bleeding to death. And I didn't want to see a doctor because I knew what the problem was, and I didn't want to address it because I knew it would drudge up all these old feelings and situations that I was pretty satisfied at that point to ignore. And a rabbi suggested to me, he said, "You're a writer." He said, "I want to see writing from you every day." And I said, "That's great. I actually write full-length books." And I don't know how I'm going to give you something every day. And the only thing that I could think of, I didn't want to disrespect him. He was trying to help. The only thing I could think of that I could finish daily were poems. And so I started to write poems really about my childhood, which was extremely abusive, and about the illness that I was going through, with the idea that I would be able to turn the story. One of the things that I advocate for in terms of addiction treatment is that we change the story. We can't change the facts of the story, but you can be a victim or you can be a survivor, right, of addiction. And so I was looking to change the story. Grain Silo 1980 was one of my first poems, and it's all true, and it was about being 8 years old. My father was sexually abusing me in really the most horrific ways you can think of. And I had climbed to the top of our grain silo and was trying to figure out if I should jump or not, because I had prayed that his abuse would end, and I figured, well, if God isn't going to take him out, then I should take myself out. This is the thought process of an 8-year-old, right? And as I was standing on the top of the grain silo, thinking, I'm not sure if I'll die, but I didn't want to paralyze myself, right? I didn't want to just break my back and have my life be worse. One of our farm hands came by and was like, are you crazy? Get off of there, right? And I couldn't jump in front of him. So I came down, and my father continued to abuse me. So the poems in the book are really about looking at those issues in very honest way, saying what happened, right? What is my remembered experience of what happened? Put it on the paper, really, really vomit it onto the paper, right? And then disconnect from that by creating a new reality with new stories. And there are some poems towards the end of the book that become much more hopeful.
Well, Connie, I just have to tell you, between reading that silo poem and having read the beginning story of how you were molested by your father in your ending addiction for a good book. And the audience, I just want to back it up a little bit and just to say how courageous Connie is to go public, not just now, but she's been talking about this for a while, about the horror that she experienced as a child, and then into that led to her drinking. So the audience, for those of you who would not have read the book yet, but the basically what we're talking about is this is timely in terms of the hashtag Me Too, but this story of Connie's story, which is that on her 7th birthday, when her mother and brother left to go pick up the cake, her father raped her for the first time. And so as I read that story, and then as she continued in, I guess the worst part of the story was when she wrote, she's 7 years old, how much could she weigh? And then her father was over 300 pounds. And so I had to put the book down. And so I'm bringing this up, Connie, in this way because this has to stop. This is depravity on a level, and I'm saying that's unspeakable because in your case and in many other cases, this is your biological father. We hear many stories where it's the step parent or something like that, but this has to just be just such a wound that it's totally understandable that the drinking, and then for audience to really understand, Connie's pain was so great that I think you reported you started drinking, you were 11 or 12, I don't remember exactly.
11, yeah.
Year, 11, and then you tell how you came to drink so that your mother wouldn't discover it, and then how crafty you were. But what floored me, Connie, was how were you able to consume 2 liters of hard alcohol per day in your 20s, that is just like mind-boggling to me. I'm thinking of Johnny Walker or Jim Beam or Vodka. 2 liters just it's mind-boggling, because that's over a gallon. No, not quite. Well, it's 2 quarts.
Not quite, but yeah.
Yeah. It's a half a gallon. If you think of a half a gallon of milk, 64 ounces, that's more than that, because that would be 66 ounces. So the thing is just, so could you just speak to that in terms of people that you've met in addiction recovery, or, people that didn't make it? So it's a miracle that you made it.
Yeah, well, yes. I think, in certain ways, I've been very blessed. And one of them is it sounds so much more horrible when you say it than when I think about it. And I think one of the reasons is that I have a lot of compassion for both of my parents. My father, there really was something wrong with him. I mean, he had to be mentally ill. I certainly couldn't diagnose him. He's been dead for 23 years or something now. I certainly can't diagnose him, but he wasn't right. And the family knew he wasn't right. I mean, his parents adopted him, and they tried to get help for him, and it was a long time ago, and there just wasn't help available. And so I can my mother is amazing in so many ways. Like, she really is amazing in so many ways, but she did not have very good parenting skills, right? And her emotional issues come out with me, and she and I don't have a relationship right now, but, I don't have anything bad to say about her, because the problem is between the two of us. It's not, she was an amazing teacher. She is a good friend. So I'm able to, I think, see people not just for a certain kind of behavior that they had at one period in time, and have compassion for them. And it's how I'm able to work with addicts in the same way. It's like they do all these awful things, but I'm looking deeper. I'm like, what's driving that? So I think I'm very fortunate in terms of that. In terms of how much I drink, I really am sort of a rock star. Like, even among alcoholics, 2 liters of hard liquor or more a day is a lot. Yeah. But, if you think about that as a beer when you wake up in the morning, and then a beer in the shower, and then a beer as you leave for work.
In the shower?
Listen, if you're not an alcoholic, I suggest you try it. A cold beer in a hot shower feels really fantastic. But so I'd have 3 beers to get me out the door, and then I'd start with the hard stuff. But if you think 2 shots, 2 shots, 2 shots, 2 shots, starting at 10 in the morning, it doesn't actually, then you really can drink. So I'd drink like that all day, then I'd get home and drink a liter of liquor at night.
Wow.
So I was drunk all the time. But, until the evening, I was drinking, just kind of a little bit constantly. I mean, I don't say that with pride. I just say that's how that happens. You can't just sit down and drink 2 liters of vodka. But if you drink, a little all day, it goes. And you know that if you drink coffee or you drink soda, right, it goes.
Wow, incredible. Well, you had a lot to deal with. I think what I see in Meeting God at Midnight, as you say, it's your memoir, that it's an example of what one of the other guests we've had on our show, Reggie Mara, who's an integral coach, does in his practice of narrative healing, which is to transcend your story. And you've certainly done that with these poems, that you don't stay stuck in that old horror. You move forward. And you have certainly healed yourself, and I think healed others with your writing and your words. And What I see in your poetry is what we spoke about the last time you were on the show, Connie. There is a clarity, a plainness of speaking that's somehow at the same time very deep, very rich, and very warm. While Bob was struck by your grain silo poem, one of the things that stood out to me, there were many, but was your name change. That this was a chance for you, and Bob and I have had other guests, and we know friends who have changed their names, that this was a way for you to really claim yourself. What led to that, and how do you own that name, Ahuva, now?
Yeah, I think changing my name was the single greatest catalyst towards healing. Because, so I'm Jewish, and for those of you who didn't figure it out from Ahuva Batya, that's Hebrew. I'm Jewish, and we all have a Hebrew name, a name in Hebrew. And so my name in Hebrew was taken from Constance, which means faithful or loyal, and was translated into Hebrew, which was Emunah. So a Hebrew name, there's no surname. You're the daughter of or son of. So I was Emunah, faithful, Bat's daughter, Yitzhak Vaperla. My mother's name is Yiddish. So I was the faithful daughter of Dennis and Pearl. And I literally made myself crazy, mentally ill. I mean, I want to be clear that I was clinically making myself nuts, trying to rewrite my history in my own mind so that I could be my parents' faithful daughter. I did not want to ever say or do anything that would hurt them or embarrass them, which is how I sort of became the black sheep in my family, right? I'm the alcoholic and I'm the whatever, and I
just one correction, Connie, you're the white sheep.
Whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
So I, here I am, I'm literally making myself mentally ill. And remember, at this time I was also physically ill, and the rabbi said to me, he said, you should change your name. Now, I had never heard of name changes in the Jewish community, so of course I said he was a liar, and he's like, listen, go look it up. I actually don't lie to you about Jewish things. And I looked it up, and what I found was that most often Jews will change their name if they're ill, and they'll put Chaya or Chaim, which means life. They'll add that onto their name. And there's a wonderful mystical tradition about this, that your name defines you, right? And we see this across traditions. This isn't just Jewish. Your name defines you, and if you don't have the right name, your life is really going to be troubled. And I thought about, I'm not the faithful daughter of my parents. I can't be that and be well. The only outcome for that scenario was suicide, and I was highly suicidal at the time. And so I thought, what would I like my name to be? And immediately what jumped into my mind was beloved. Ahuva means beloved. And wouldn't I love to be called beloved all day long?
Wow.
So I thought, Ahuva, Bat, Yitzhak Vaperla. So now I just have an untrue statement. Beloved daughter of Dennis and Pearl. That's just not true. I can't do anything with that. So Batya in the Bible, of course, is Pharaoh's daughter who finds Moses. And Bat means daughter. Yah is one name for God. And so I became beloved daughter of God. So I went to the rabbi with this, and I said, I would like to be Ahuva Batya. And he said, well, let's drop your father's name entirely, because in our tradition, I don't need it. I need a Jewish mother. I don't need a Jewish father. So we dropped his name. And so now I'm Ahuva Batya, beloved daughter of God, daughter of pearl, which basically in the Jewish community reads, beloved daughter of God, by the way, she's Jewish. And so that, I have to tell you, as soon as he was like, yes, that can be your name, my blood sugar went to a normal level. My blood pressure went to a normal level. I stopped having suicidal ideation. I mean, literally in an instant, my life changed. And, you know, I really love being called Ahuva. Now, I still write a lot of stuff under Constance because one of the problems that we have in this nation is that people can't tell the difference between Hebrew and Arabic. And I hate to say it, but it's true. If you are a Muslim writer, if people think that you might be a Muslim, your stuff isn't going to sell. And so, and my degrees are under Constance Scharff. I mean, my degrees, that's the name they were conferred under. But all of my current writing, my poetry, and my fiction that's coming out later this year, that all comes out under Ahuva because I just love it, you know. And the diminutive of Ahuva is Ahuvala, right? So my friends they'll be like, oh, Ahuvala. And it just makes my heart like smile. You know, if a heart could smile, my heart smiles when I hear that name. And when I'm in Israel, I mean, people are like, your name is so beautiful. Do you know what your name means? I'm like, I do. I mean, that's why it is what it is. And I just, it really, it gave me a new identity. I mean, we talk about changing your life through changing your story. There is nothing that gives you a new identity like changing your name. And it's hard sometimes. Some of my friends, you know, my family don't want to use it. And I think that's odd to me because I'm like, when you got married and you changed your last name, I didn't insist on calling you by your maiden name, right? But I let it go. And I figure in time, they'll come around.
Yeah, name changes can be work for a lot of people, but I think that is, and as you describe it, a very empowering action to name yourself and to choose the name that fits you where you are in your life. So that is truly beautiful. So Connie, we'll just continue this discussion. Audience, we'll be back in a moment on Learn to Live Stress-Free with our featured guest today, Ahuva Batya Scharff.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Wright Jr., the Stress Relief Doctor, co-host of the Learn to Live Stress-Free podcast series. I'm an author, speaker, and stress management wellness coach. My published study is the first to show the connection between stress reduction, grief recovery, nitric oxide spiking, and the relaxation response. And my practical application of this knowledge helps you relieve the stresses of everyday life. I have the tools to dissolve your pain points quickly and effectively. Email me to find out how you can start to feel better now at stressfreenow.info/contact. That's stressfreenow.info/contact. Have you been procrastinating about completing an important project or pursuing a treasured dream? Christine Wright specializes in helping her coaching clients to lay out clear, elegant strategies. She shows you how to quickly build your confidence to uncover and eliminate your habitual patterns of resistance and self-sabotage. Christine helps you discover those meaningful insights that will get you to do what works so you can celebrate your successes. Go to stressfreenow.info/contact to let Christine know that you're ready to live your ideal life now. Again, that's stressfreenow.info/contact.
Welcome back to Learn to Live Stress-Free. Welcome back to Learn to Live Stress-Free as we continue our conversation with our featured guest today, Dr. Ahuva Batya Scharff.
Connie, I just have to tell you, when I was listening to your explanation, your lovely explanation of the name change, two things occurred to me. The first was yours is the first explanation that I've heard, I think that both Christine and I have heard, where the person talking about the name change could actually explain what it was about and be calm and not livid. We have been shocked sometimes when we've asked someone, so how is it that you came to change your name and what does it mean? And we've had experiences where people fly off the handle, or you get the silent routine, like, oh, you changed your name, okay. It's like, I didn't forget for 40 years you were called X and now you're called Y. And so, I'm just saying, you don't have to tell us what it's about, but, we notice, everybody noticed that you changed your name. And so that is the first part of it. But the other aspect of it is that what you said about the name being very powerful in terms of not just resonating with yourself, but resonating as a vibrational meaning both within your sphere of people you're interacting with, but also from an archetypal standpoint that names have this broader thing going on. And so with that said, I want to mention that we want to make sure that we connect you with our friend Sharon Lynn Wyeth, who has done extensive research and actually has a name science called namology, where she has actually deconstructed the meaning and behavioral patterns of names in terms of where the vowels fall in your name versus the consonants, and it's a very interesting thing. So we will connect you with her, and because she tells the story of when her kids were young, they used to bring their friends in the house and they'd say, "Oh, don't tell your mother your name because she'll know all about you." But then when they got older and they were dating, they're like, "Hey, Ma, give us the skinny on tell us everything about this person because we're dating them or considering dating them." So I just want to say that. So, Connie, as you know, Christine and I saw your addiction recovery presentation at the annual Consciousness Society presentation conference held at Yale University last year. Could you share with our audience the addiction research findings that you laid out for that audience? I remember they were very prescient.
Well, in terms of consciousness, addiction really is misunderstood. And what we have learned over the last few years, really because of fMRI scans, right, of a certain kind of brain scan, is that addiction, the behaviors of addiction, right, drug seeking, the ritual of getting the drug ready, then the drug use, in addition to bathing the brain in whatever chemical you're using, but that ritual of drug seeking actually changes the structure and function of the brain. So it, in essence, changes who you are, right? Now, I don't believe that consciousness, and there's, studies on both sides of this, but I don't believe that consciousness is just a matter of brain function. But the brain mediates our consciousness, right? Our spirit, our soul, whatever you want to call that. And so if that brain is co-opted by addiction, the true essence, the best part of who you are cannot manifest. And so what we try to do, or what I try to do in addiction treatment, is to use best practices, particularly with complementary medicine, so that we rewire the brain such that, now we have to, of course, deal with the psychology of all the trauma or pain that you've been through and deal with that archaic pain. But at the same time, through meditation, through acupuncture, through yoga, particularly yogic breathing, what we want to do is rewire the brain so that it really does its job better and the best parts of you, so that you can have a fully conscious experience, right? Because I'll tell you from experience, and you know this if you've ever been drunk or if you've ever been high, right? You're blunted. You're not necessarily your best self, right? Now, there are exceptions of hallucinogenic, entheogenic substances that give you a different kind of experience. But for the most part, right, if you just smoke so much weed that you can't stand up, you're not your best self. Right? And so what we're trying to do with addiction treatment on the method that I promote is to change that brain function so that you are firing on all cylinders.
Great. So, Connie, I just want you to briefly touch on the stages of change model that you talk about in the Addiction for Good, because apparently the model for intervention that's used there gets superior results, and I would imagine many in our audience might not be familiar with that approach, including
stages,
therapists and coaches and addiction recovery specialists, that they need to hear this approach that you're using and are familiar with.
Sure. So stages of change comes from Dr. Prochaska, who's out at the University of Rhode Island, and his colleagues Norcross and DiClemente. But basically what the stages of change says is that change happens in a especially addiction recovery, and Dr. Prochaska's work is with smoking cessation, but it doesn't matter if it's substance abuse or pornography, or change happens in a fairly predictable pattern. And what the stages of change does, and I encourage you to get Prochaska's work, Changing for Good, that there are obstacles that we would, in addiction treatment, we'd call them triggers, relapse triggers. There are obstacles that keep people from getting from one stage to another. Now, this is not to say that change is unidirectional. You can have setbacks and all that sort of thing. But what's most useful about the stages for change are not only the interventions to get you through a stage, but also recognizing what the obstacles are so that we don't have to experience them all, right? That we can prevent you from slipping up because of these obstacles. And basically, the process is you don't know there's a problem, pre-contemplation, which we call denial, right? Then you know that there's a problem, but you're too afraid to do anything about it, right? That's the guy that sits on the bar stool and says, I know I'm an alcoholic, but it's too hard to get treatment. Then you have preparation, and then you have action, and you start to go through actually making, being prepared to make changes, actually making changes, and then the maintenance stage where the change, I've been sober almost 20 years. I don't really think about drinking anymore. It just isn't on the radar. And when it comes up, I'm like, ew, like it's just not what I do anymore. Dr. Prochaska talks about the stage termination, where the change is set. I don't believe that. I think there's always a possibility for relapse, and so we stop using the model at maintenance. And what do you need to do to stay clean? Right? And what do you need to do to live a happy life? And that's essentially what the stages of change model is. But it's extremely useful in a clinical setting.
Thank you so much, Connie. As you just said about living a happy life, you really seem to have come to that point in your life through everything that you've gone through, leading you where you are today, that you're doing work that you love, that you excel at in terms of your addiction recovery work, your writing work, and recently you've mentioned to us now that you're involved with a group, rocktorecovery.org. Would you tell us a little bit about that group and the projects that you're currently working on?
Yeah, I'm so excited about Rock to Recovery. So I met them at a treatment center, and I had worked briefly for a record label back in the 1990s, and so very familiar with rock groups of the 1990s. And I met this guy, and I was like, I kind of think I know him. And he felt like he knew me. We didn't actually work together, but we knew who each other were. And this is a group of professional musicians, mostly really like true rock stars, who are sober themselves, and they go to treatment centers and to veterans organizations and help them use music as therapy to write, and they write a song and perform it in an hour and a half. It is the most profound. Now, when I first saw it, I thought I was going to see like a third grade music performance, because most people in treatment, they, first of all, are not musicians, and second of all, they're pretty sick, right, in those first couple of weeks of treatment. And so I thought it was going to be just a horror. And I was blown away by the quality of the music that was performed. And then the next day, after they perform the music, it's published to the cloud. The next day, I was giving a presentation in the treatment center to a whole bunch of different groups who had gone to Rock to Recovery the day before, and they were all sharing their rock bands, and they were all sharing their music, and they were so excited about it. I just had to be involved in it. And so now Rock to Recovery is expanding. It was only in Southern California. Now they're working with veterans groups all over the nation, and I'm working to help them to see their place in the evidence base, because there are so many good treatments that do not have to cost a lot of money, that really work to change the brain. Oliver Sacks has shown how music in particular accesses the brain in ways that talk therapy cannot. And so when you add these complementary therapies to traditional, quote unquote, treatment programs, you get astounding results.
It absolutely sounds it. And both Bob and I, Bob has a background in sound healing, so we do know how important and what a catalyst for change and healing sound can be, and certainly music is right there very high on the list. Well, Connie, we want to thank you for being on our show again today and sharing your expertise, your personal story, your knowledge. I know that it has been a gift to all those who are listening. And Connie, I'd like to just ask you to take this time to let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. So you can find me at my website, ConstanceScharff.com, and all my information is there.
Okay, wonderful. So audience, check out Dr. Connie Scharff at her website, which is her name, ConstanceScharff.com, ConstanceScharff.com, ConstanceScharff.com. And also, you can look her up on her Facebook page, facebook.com/Dr. and also check out her the group that she's recently become involved with, rocktorecovery.org. So, Connie, thank you so much for being on the show again today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Connie, what final thoughts or key idea would you like our audience to take away from today's broadcast?
I think the most important thing for anyone to know is that there's always hope. You know, when I work with families who have addicted loved ones or people who are really in trouble, we always say where there's breath, there's hope. As long as you're on this side of the dirt, as long as you're waking up in the morning, it is possible to make life-changing choices. And they can be really good choices. You know, I don't have the life that I thought I would have when I was, 7 or 8 years old, but my life is incredible. And you can have that too. You just have to believe that change is possible.
Connie, thank you for that. And I'd like you to just wrap up with this thought. At the bottom of your emails, you have a beautiful signature phrase. Could you just tell our audience what that is?
Sure, you don't have to have a great start to have a great ending.
I love it. Okay, I love it. So, Connie, I want to thank you for being our featured guest today. And audience, I want to thank you for listening wherever you are and whatever time zone you're in, because our show is literally heard all around the world, and we continue to be amazed and pleased that our show is heard in Japan, in Germany, in Australia, parts of Africa, and, of course, all over the United States and Canada and into South America. So thank you, Connie, for being on our show. So, audience, we definitely always look forward to receiving your comments about our podcast broadcast. Please let us know if there are any additional topics you'd like to see us cover, or if there's a guest like Connie you'd like to have us invite back. Please contact us through our website with your feedback and suggestions. Remember, listeners, if you'd like to experience the same benefits our coaching clients get with us, including learning how you can get more results in your day and easy ways to dissolve your chronic pain, stress, and anxiety, then give us a call at 954-900-2179. Mention that you heard our Stress Free Now podcast show, and you'll receive a free gift from us. Call today to schedule your free consultation. For Christine Wright, this is Dr. Robert Wright, Jr. of StressFreeNow.info. Until next time, be safe and be well.